So let's go ahead and briefly talk about the project structure. But before we do that, let's quickly take a look here. You'll see this is the File Explorer. You can search here. This is for version control, debugging, and then finally extensions. So click on extensions. And if you go here and type TypeScript Hero and search, this will come back. This is a handy tool I like to use when writing Angular, since it's TypeScript based. So you can click normally there's like an install button there. You click install and then reload after it's done installing, and should be good to go. And so that'll help you with some of your automatically importing, some of the statements. Really handy to use. So now that we have our TypeScript Hero extension installed, so here you can see the open pages or files you have. Kind of gets in the way for me, so I'm going to hide it from the sidebar here. So now we just see our regular files. So let's talk about what we have here. So we have E2E end-to-end testing. We're not going to be doing much testing, well, no testing in this tutorial. That's outside the scope. Here we have our node modules directory. So these are all our dependencies that came from installing with npm. Let's skip over source for now. We have Angular CLI .json. So this is an important file. So if you have certain styles or anything else you need loaded, JavaScript files, these are places where you can place your global style sheets or files, JavaScript files, and they'll be added to your project. Also here we have environments. So if you need to add a new config file for a different environment, staging or testing or something like that, you could add it here and then add your file in the environments folder, which I'll show in a little bit. Don't need to worry about this. This will just kind of say what the spacing is. Git ignore. This is for your version control. So any of you that are using GitHub or Bitbucket or something like that, using Git for your version control, this just says what to ignore because we don't want to include node modules. We just want to install them every time. Karma, this is another test runner. So we're not going to be doing any testing. Package.json. So this has all our dependencies in here. These are all the dev dependencies and our regular dependencies, which are required to make the project work. So should already have all this stuff in there. Protractor is more testing. README just explains what's going on. tsconfig. So this will explain, basically dictates how we're going to transpile or compile our TypeScript to regular JavaScript. So you can set targets, so ES5, so it'll actually make it ES5 compatible, which is good. So it'll work on most browsers, most modern browsers. Then TSLint, it'll check for errors, so you can specify certain errors, certain restrictions. That way it'll let you know if something's wrong. And then Yarn, this is what's being used for the project here to set the files and dependencies we're going to have. So don't need to really worry about that, and do not edit this. You only want to edit your package.json, and then this will get updated. So here, if we go to source, let's go down here and let's talk about what's in the source directory. So you'll see you have a favicon. So if you have a little icon you want to display at the top of the browser, that's there. Index.html. So this is where your app loads, right here in the app root. So that's important to pay attention to. It's a single page app. Everything gets loaded right here between these two tags. So if you need to add anything, styling or anything else that need to be included here before everything, or you wanted some file that showed up on every page, you could do it here if you really wanted to. Don't really need to worry about main.ts or polyfills. It's just some stuff to help you for certain browsers that don't support for certain features, include additional styling. So here you can put some global styles. You saw this included in our Angular CLI JSON file. So if you have any styles you want to override, you can throw them in here. Another testing file. Some more stuff we don't really need to worry about. Typings, we might do a little something here in typings, just specifying certain TypeScript requirements for certain files. Then we have Angular CLI JSON. Oh, we already talked about that. All right, so now back up here, you'll see we have assets. So this is where we're going to put all our pictures and images. Environments we talked about when we were talking about the Angular CLI JSON, this dev and prod. So they correspond to, this is your dev one and this is your prod. So if you had certain configurations or certain APIs you want to call, where you had a dev API and then your actual production one, you could set those environment variables there, and then use them in your project. And also, finally, we have app. So this is kind of the core component here, is the app component. So we look at the TS file, there's nothing really going on. It's got a simple HTML page for it. It's got its CSS styling. There's nothing in there. And then you'll see these, you'll see app.component.spec. So spec is a testing file, which we're not going to focus on testing, but here's what it would look like. This gets auto-generated for you. And then finally, app.module, which we'll be using quite a bit. So if you have, every time you add a new component, add a service, add a class, add an interface, classes and interfaces you won't be adding here, but for components and services and some other providers, you'll be adding them in here, importing them, and then declaring them or importing them or providing them. And then this is kind of where the whole app gets bootstrapped together and made into an entire package. So we'll be adding stuff in here from time to time. Great. So that's kind of a high level overview of everything in here. In the next video, we'll start getting some pictures, adding them in here, and we'll be on our way.